Okay, good morning. Right, so we're up to Siman Samach Gimel, discussing all the various halachas regarding saying Krias Shema, do you stand, do you sit? So we said in Sif Aleph that you can say it, Mahalech, Oimed, Sheichiv, Reichiv, however you say it is okay. However, in Sif Gimel, which is where we're up to, it says, Hoye Mahalech Baderech, Verotz Likris Krias Shema, Tzorich Lamoid B'Posuk Rishon, which we've spoken about. The first, if you're walking, one should stop when you say the first pasuk of Krias Shema. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Sif Cotton Gimel, Sif Cotton Tes, in Halacha Gimel, Hoy Mahalech, Afal Gav de Le'el Sif Aleph, even though previously in Sif Aleph, Mashma de Minadin Mutar Likros Kishu Mahalech. It seems to suggest that Me'ikadin, you're allowed to say Krias Shema even when you're walking. Mikol Mokem Mitzvah Min Amuvcha Lamoid B'Shas Pasuk Rishon. However, Lechatchila one should stop during the first pasuk to Ikka Krias Shema, because that is, the first pasuk is the essential Krias Shema. Lefi she'eina miyushav kol kach, because if a person is walking, he's not focused, he's not really concentrating sufficiently. Ve'ein yochel lechavin kashu mahalech kasher hoya omed, and it's not the same as if he's standing still. But b'di'eved im kora kashu mahalech ein tzorich lachzor v'likros. If b'di'eved you did it, you don't have to go back and do it again, but lechatchila one should try and stop. Tzorich la'amod, sifkat yud, rotzolema, L'hisakev b'mokum echad, to just stay still. It doesn't have to be standing. It could be either sitting or standing, but the point is not moving. Even the nighttime Shema, the dafka im meshane me'amida liyeshiva osa likris Shema shel arvis. We said that is what the problem is, to show that you're passing like Beis Shammai and to go from Amida to Yeshiva in the evening one, because in the evening one Beis Shammai say B'shach b'cha, you should say it sitting down. We passing like Beis Hillel that it's just Zman Shchiva. You say it in the morning and you say it in the evening, the time when most people go to bed or get up in the morning. But Mishum Deniraka Isaac Beis Shammai, it suggests you're doing like Beis Shammai. Masha'en kein mehalicha liyeshiva. But the contrast is, if you're going from halicha to yeshiva, you're walking and then you sit down, that's not the same problem. That doesn't show that you're going like Beis Shammai. That just shows that you want to focus during your Krias Shema. So that would be okay. Now, what about if you're sitting on a train? What if you're driving in a car and Higiyah Zman Krias Shema? So it says the Mishnah Berurah, v'yoshev b'karin, if you're on a carriage or b'sfina or on a boat, or by extension in a car or something like that, ein tzorich lamud. There you don't have to stand. Why? To yuchel lechavin heitev. On the contrary, by sitting down, by staying seated, you can focus better. I'm b'shai tshuva prima gadim u'v'reichim ala behema. And what about if you're riding on a donkey or on a horse or something, on an animal? Yesh deis ben achronim v'nochen lahachmir, and it's better to be stationary. Okay, Yud Aleph, the pasuk rishon. So this requirement, the lechatchila, you should be standing still for the first pasuk of Krias Shema. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Sif Cotton Yud Aleph, v'varch shein kvod malchus le'elam void, is bichlal pasuk rishon hu. That's included in that, and it means therefore the first two sentences. V'yesh machmirin ad al levavecha. Actually, to keep still until that pasuk ad levavecha. Umisham v'hala mutar likros b'alicha b'mida, and after that you can actually carry on either standing or walking. That's okay, like as per Sif Aleph. Okay, good. Sif Dalet. Says the Mechaber, Ikka ha-Kavanna hu b'pasuk rishon. The main focus of our Kavanna should be in the first pasuk. Hilkach, therefore, imkara v'lo kivein, and therefore, if a person read Krias Shema v'lo kivein, and he did not have Kavanna v'lo kivein libo b'pasuk rishon, lo yotze de chavasa, he has not fulfilled his obligation of saying Krias Shema v'choze v'kora, and he's got to go back and say it again. V'afilu l'man dam mitzvah ein tzrichas kavanas. Even if you are of the opinion that mitzvahs do not need kavanah, this is the big machlokas. Even at that shitta, Meida Hocha, he will agree that here you've got to have kavanah in the first pasuk. Okay, Sif Cotton Yud Beis, says the Mishnah Berurah, pasuk rishon. Ein Sif Cotton Yud Aleph, Du adin bar shein kvod malchus le'elam void. The imlo kiven bo. If you didn't have kavanah in that second line, gam kein tzorich lachzor v'likris b'kavanah, you've also got to go back and you've got to read it again b'kavanah. If you look at note 14 in the Dirshu, il misha shochach lo bar shein kvod malchus le'elam void. What if you just forgot to say it? Yeah, you Shema Yisrael, and you went straight to Vahafta. Because of the Bir Halacha, the Bir Halacha says in Siman Samach Aleph, she'im omar Vahafta Ein sorich lachzor avuzeh, ele yomrenu b'makom sheniska. You don't have to go back. You can just say Baruch Shem wherever you're up to. V'chein le'inyan mishlo kivein b'Baruch Shem k'v'malchusay. If someone didn't have Kavanna during that, saying Baruch Shem, Kosav Hagon Chaim Kanievsky, B'das habi halacha, Shem hischil kva v'ahavto ein sorich lachzor, v'chein Kosav Aruch Shulchan. So if you didn't have Kavanna then you don't have to go back for Baruch Shem. Yeah, interesting. If you've already started v'ahavto. Okay. So I guess when the Mishnah Berurah says Sorech Lachzor, the Talikras B'Kavanna is talking about what you haven't yet said V'ahavto. I suppose that's how you explain it. Okay, Sif Kotten Yud Gimel. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Lo Yotzos. So if you didn't have Kavanna when you said the Pasuk Shema Yisrael, then you have not fulfilled your mitzvah. Afilum Kodim Shehischel Likris Nischaven. L'kaim ba kriya mitzvahs kriya Shema. Mitzvah says kriya Shema. Amazing halacha. Even if before you started Shema, as one should, you focus and you say, right, I'm about to fulfill the mitzvah asay of kriya Shema and the mitzvah deraisa, and then mikol malkum kol shebe emtz upon the libel advar macherim, and then you lost concentration halfway through. Right, 2 seconds later, you're halfway through, you're saying the first pasuk of Shema, and you get distracted. Hare loy kibul olav machashamayim baskom salev. Therefore, that's insufficient. So even then, even though you thought about it beforehand and I'm going to do it, and then you got distracted in the middle or your mind wandered, you have to say the pasuk again. V'choz of a curse, says the Mishnah Berurah in Sif Kotten Yudalad, b'lachash. Now don't say it again loud. Why shouldn't you say it loud? Shelo yeh nira kamakabel shtei reshuyos chas v'shalom. Because saying Shema Yisrael twice sort of suggests that you're being makabel 2 deities. One can't do that. V'ayin le'el b'simen samachalaf Mishnah Berurah Sif Kotten chaf beis. V'afilim kvar kora kol pasha Shema v'hoim Shema. Even if you've said came out the whole of Shema, you said the first 2 paragraphs, and you remember that you just sort of were daydreaming during the first pasuk of Shema. You've got to repeat the whole paragraph of Shema. Because if you only read the first pasuk, it's as if you've read it out of order, because you've read the rest of the paragraph and then you go back to just the first pasuk, and that's no good. And therefore you've got to repeat the first whole paragraph of Shema. What if you remember halfway through the second paragraph that you didn't say it with Kavanna? Finish off the second paragraph. In other words, you've said Shema, and you didn't have Kavanna when you said the first pasuk of Shema, as one needs. You then find yourself halfway through V'hoim Shemaya, finish off V'hoim Shemaya, go back and say Shema and the whole first paragraph, and then continue with Vayom with the third paragraph. Okay, it's going to be a long morning, right? Okay, Siv Kotten Tezvov, Moide Hacha. So even the man Da'ama who holds mitzvahs ein and strichas Kavanna here would agree that the pasuk of Shema Yisrael does need Kavanna. Says the Mishnah Berurah, you've gotten Tezvav, the afal pish ein mischaven not says pozei de mitzvah. I'll call upon him tzarich Kavannas halev bechol pasuk rishon. Even he would agree that the whole of the first pasuk needs proper Kavanna kadei sheikabel olav al machos shemayim. Okay.
Therefore, even if the order's wrong now, it's fine.
Yes, he says that actually in 8. If you look at number 18, I wasn't going to mention that, but no, good, I'm pleased you did. Number 18, he says, Mavur she Krias haparsha shelo ala seder ma'ila. Interesting. Saying it out of order actually helps, yeah. Okay, fine, okay.
It's up if we said before that if you've already started V'ahavta, you don't.
So that's because it's the... No, you don't have to... What, yeah, that was that was in footnote 14, we said, Misha shochach lo me'baruch shem kvod malchusai, then imama v'ahavta ein sorech lachzor avozeh ele yeren b'mokum sheniska. You got to say it in the place you did it. So that's for Baruch Shem. That's for Baruch Shem. But Shema, if you didn't do that, then you got to go back. Yeah. Okay. Sif Hey. Im hoya yoshem. Right. So this happens. Yeah. If a person was sleeping. But what if the age-old question, right? You know, you're a person sleeping, and you wake them up in order. The clock is ticking, and you're getting towards Seson Krishma. Anyone who's got teenage boys, and Paul's the exception, of course, because his boys would be up at the crack of dawn. But if you've got teenage boys, this is I hear this the whole time. Do you have to wake up the kids for Krishma, right? in the time that the clock is ticking. So says the Mechaber, Im hoya yoshein, if a person was sleeping, Metzarim oisai, Meirim oisai, at shehikra pasuk rishon, v'hu er mamish. That you got to wake him up in order that he says the first pasuk. Mikan ve'elech ein metzarim oisai, kadei shehikra v'hu er mamish. But if as long as he said the first pasuk, then you don't have to trouble him that he reads it, that he's mamish awake. Even if he's sort of half asleep, then the rest of the Shema, that's okay, then he's Yotze. A guy who's saying Shema in a state of drunkenness, that will get to Mishim and Samachtes. Okay, says the Mechaber, says the Mishabura, Sifkat and Tezayim, Misnamnim. So either the guy is sort of half asleep, or there's some other onus which is mevatel his kavanna yotza. Because at the end of the day, even though he was half asleep, he was sort of half awake, half asleep. At the end of the day, he said it. But if the person is so dead to the world, he's so asleep, then lo yotza. Because at the end of the day, one has to read all 3 paragraphs of Shema. V'da, yesh sholosh deis ben ha-poskim. So it comes out there are 3 opinions in the poskim. Yesh oimrim derak pasuk rishon bevad hu min ha-Torah. Just the first pasuk of Shema is min ha-Torah. V'yesh oimrim dekol ha-parsha rishonu min ha-Torah. The whole first paragraph is min ha-Torah. V'yesh oimrim degam hashniya hu min ha-Torah. Even the second paragraph is min ha-Torah. Or parsha tzitzis lekula alma hu min ha-Torah. Everyone agrees that the third paragraph is min ha-Torah. Why? Kadei lahazkis yes Mitzrayim. Like we've said before, saying Ani Hashem Elokeichem Asher Hotzeisi Eschem Eretz Mitzrayim, you are fulfilling a separate mitzvah of Zechiras Yetzias Mitzrayim, aside from the mitzvah of Krishma. V'tiknu lahaskir bizman Krishma. Chazal Mesakin, you makayim this mitzvah saseh bizman Krishma. V'ayin lekam b'siman samach zayin Mishnah Berurah v'shai tshuva sham. Now, take a look at paragraph 21, the footnote 21. Misha shoka b'sheina v'lo kora af es pasuk harishon shel Krishma v'chein lo yispalel. So that's what we were discussing before. So you got your sleeping teenager. Do you have to wake him up or not? One should wake him up to daven. Even though right now there's no chiyuv on him because the guy is asleep. Right? They won't be punished for being mevatel aseh because right now he's sort of dead to the world. He's asleep. Mikol makom hasvara hi sheyesh lezakayso sheyafsid mitzvahs krishma utfila. That you shouldn't, it's what a tremendous zechus to have been mekayim the mitzvah aseh of krishma, of davening, etc. Now that's why it gets a little bit complicated because. With teenage kids, one needs to take advice because it's also about relationship and sometimes long-term gain, and short-term damage, and so it needs shikul. But he says because Mikol Mokum, he is actually potter because he's that's a famous story. That's a famous issue as well. There's discussion with Rav Shlomo Zalman. Also, what if a person is asleep in the sukkah and you want to go sleep there? Can you carry him out of the sukkah? Because right now he's asleep and therefore he's now potter. The mitzvah is sort of falling asleep in the sukkah. So there's lots of discussion about that. Okay, enough for now. Okay, good. Sivov. Hakoire Krishma. When you're saying Krishma, you should be fully focused on saying Shema. And lo yirmos be'enov, you can't even sort of indicate, wink with your eyes. V'lo yikris b'svosov, or sort of lip read. V'lo yare be'etz ba'osov, or point b'parsha rishona when you're in the middle of the first paragraph of Shema. Shehu ikka kabbalas al malchus shemayim, because the first paragraph is the ikka of being mekabel al malchus shemayim. B'nei shenir kakor arai, because it just shows that you're reading it flippantly. Or chesiv v'dibarto bom v'darshinan asei oisom keva. This should be your focus. So you shouldn't be doing other things and indicating and doing 1,000 things during the first paragraph. It says in Mishnah Berurah lo yirmos va'afilu dvar mitzvah osa lirmos. Even for mitzvah purposes, the kolshkin should also lishov tabak bekrishma, and certainly you can't shmek tabak, to have a little smell. But parsha rishona, to smell, incense or whatever. V'yesh machmir and gam parsha shnin, some machmir even in the second paragraph not to be meramez, not to do any of these things. Achle dvar mitzvah v'kula alma mutzah limers parsha shnia, aval lahafsik lehedjelo, but to stop, not. Now, if you look at footnote 24, interesting halacha. What if you see your friend doing something wrong? He's about to take a bite into a trefa sandwich. Are you in the middle of Shema? Are you allowed to stop him from doing that? Kosav HaKaf Chaim. It goes to the back here, to the bottom of page 16 at the back. I'll just read it for you. He quotes the Kaf Chaim in the name of the Ritva. Shim ein efsharos acheres. If there's no alternative, mutalo limros vafilu lahafsik b'dibur. Even to speak, to stop somebody else doing an avera. Shahari lo gar mishela shalom shemataras b'pnei hayira. It's not worse than saying hello b'pnei hayira when a person is scared. For kvod shemaim odif, and kvod shemaim is more choshev than yira. And then you have two other issues. What if you're in the middle of Shema and the fellow comes around collecting tzedaka? Now, there's two issues. Number one, is the guy allowed to collect tzedaka if he's saying Shema? And number two, what about you and I saying Shema? Are you allowed to give? So he says here, ha'oisef tzedaka ba'odeker krishma kosav ben ishchai she'af shazel l'dvar mitzvah mikol makom asa l'asaskein. So the person who's collecting tzedaka should not be davening at the same time. That's the ben ishchai. ולעניין נסינה צדקה באמצע קריאת שמע, כוסף הגאון חיים קניאבסקי, שבאמצע התפילה ייתכן שפוטר, when I'm the mice, if I'm davening Shema and a guy's coming around, I'm now engaged in a mitzvah of davening, and therefore I have no obligation to give this person. However, he does add, but if I want to, I'm allowed to, even in the first paragraph of Shema. Interesting. Shlomo Zalman, he used to keep little coins on his desk. He davened there in what's it called, the Gra shul, and he would, and there stuff people would come the whole time, and he would keep little shekel coins, and people would always just each person would take one shekel. So he wasn't actively doing it; he would focus on his davening, but he was sort of mekayim it at the same time. That's what he would do. So send your potter from giving then, because it's a potter mitzvah, but you are allowed to. Says Chaim Kanievsky. Okay, let's just finish off quickly. Zion. A person was involved in work, and suddenly you realize you've got to say Krishma. You've got to stop your work. You shouldn't be reading it in a sort of a temporary, flippant way. Which suggests that beyond that, in the Birchas Krishma, that you're allowed to continue your work whilst you're saying it. Okay. You're working on the top of a tree, you're building, whatever. Chazal don't make you go down to the ground to say, okay, but you can do it up there. Halacha test, there's no mishmar on that. Halacha test, hakatof afal pisha maso al ksefo, a guy who's schlepping stuff. He's transporting heavy burdens, and he's got a packle on his shoulder. Krishma, he can actually just do it then. He doesn't have to take it off his shoulder in order to say Krishma. But don't start when you're sort of loading the burden on or unloading it, because then you can't concentrate. There you need more Yishuv Hadas. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Al Kseifa afilu im hamasa hu shadalat kavin, even if it's a heavy burden, if it's 4 kav, the legabe tefillah also lekamon, legabe Krishma muta. For Krishma they allow you to do it. Okay, say that, we'll leave it there.